What is going on, everyone? This is Zach from Clutch Crew Sports, back with another podcast. And on this episode, we are going to be talking about week one of the NFL season. We're going to go over some good, some bad, some ugly for the AFC and the NFC teams. Personally, watching these games, this was a crazy, crazy week one. I've never seen kickers matter more than week one of this season. I mean, it's pretty apparent that teams weren't really taking kicking seriously in the offseason, and now some teams are paying the price, some teams are benefiting from it. So kickers, their importance level I think is much more heightened after this week, but some crazy results as expected from week one in the NFL, and I'm always here for that. Let me introduce you now to the rest of the crew.
What's going on, guys? It's Connor, the co-host with the most, and I was a benefactor of one of those crazy games. The Steelers managed to pull the upset over the Bengals, although some somber news going there that we've probably lost TJ Watt for, if not the entire season, at least most of the season. So that's going to be a huge hamper on the defense. But yeah, definitely excited to get this. There was a tie, potentially was going to be a second tie. Like, I can't even remember the last time two ties happened in the same week in the NFL. That's got to be ages and ages ago. But there was the potential for that in the Steelers-Bengals game. And then, of course, all the 1 o'clock window in general was nuts. So I'm excited to talk about these teams.
Yeah, so that's what we'll be talking about, good, bad, and ugly. And next week, we're going to be doing more so the buy or sell, like overreaction sort of stuff. We want to give at least 2 weeks before we talk about we're not saying, oh my God, this team's out of the playoffs. Like, we're not saying that yet. We might say that next week.
Yeah, if like the Rams or Bengals start 0-2, then we might start considering these things.
Yeah. And we'll have a whole host of other, sort of questions. Hopefully Eric will be able to join us for that as well. So we'll have the whole crew on for that. But for now, anyways, just looking at week one, obviously it's important not to get too high or too low based off week one's results. We know this is when usually the irregularities happen for the season. Teams that win week one don't always necessarily go on to have a winning season. And of course, you can lose this game, still do fine. But like after the second or third week, that's when it's real rare that the Super Bowl elite teams, if you don't, start out with a positive record, after 2 or 3 games, then it's probably not going to be your year for a Super Bowl. But we'll start with the AFC, and we'll start with the good as well. We'll work our way down to the ugly. But for the good, I'm going to have to take the Kansas City Chiefs. I think what a just dominant win for him to go on the road at Arizona. Arizona was a playoff team last year. A lot of people expect them to miss the playoffs or take a step back from last year. And I definitely agree. They're not the toughest of competitions, but it's still on the road for them. And a team they're not super familiar with in another conference that has a good quarterback in Kyler Murray. They just looked like the regular Chiefs. And, that was, during the offseason, that was a question. Oh, is losing Tyreek Hill going to change the offense? Or is Patrick Mahomes is he going to be exposed without Tyreek Hill? And I never bought into any of that stuff to begin with. But the Chiefs just affirmed that, they're here to stay. That they're a team to be reckoned with. All the talk in the AFC West with the Chargers, the Raiders, and the Broncos all getting better. In my mind, they have to beat the Chiefs. Until they beat the Chiefs are the favorites. They should be the ones definitely to be feared. It was pretty surprising in last week's episode. None of us had them in the AFC Championship game. That felt a little weird to me, considering the last, I can't even remember the last time, someone like Eric didn't pick them to win the Super Bowl. So,
oh yeah, I think I'm pretty sure, other than this season, because we've had 4 other prediction sets that we've made, and in those other 3, like I'm pretty sure in every single one we've all had the AFC title game, like every single one of us. It wasn't even like we would have different winners. Like we didn't necessarily all have them winning the AFC title game, but we all had them at least in it. So yeah, that was definitely very weird.
Yeah, and the offense, it's still going to be good. Mahomes is still great, obviously. They didn't lose a step without Tyreek Hill. Travis Kelce showed that he's still, in my mind, the best tight end. So the defense looked good as well. Just the Chiefs, everything, they checked the box on everything this week, as well as having an emergency kicker too. So talking about the kicker situation, the Butker, he on his first kickoff came up limp, and Justin Reed did a pretty phenomenal job on kickoffs after that. But yeah, so the Chiefs, they had one of the best performances this week, and not to be outdone though, Connor talked about the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah, the Buffalo Bills, they were the other team that, we're having here as the good, definitely a good week for the top teams in the AFC, the ones that were dominant last year. The Chiefs and the Bills definitely still proving that, they're the ones to beat in the AFC. And the Bills looked completely dominant in week 1 against the Rams, the defending Super Bowl champions on the road. I know the Rams don't necessarily have that much of a home field advantage. I know like half the stadium was still Bills fans, but it is still travel. It's still on the other side of the country. And, it was looking a little bit shaky in the first half. It was tied 10-10, but after at halftime, but after halftime, when the second half rolled around, the Bills just completely ran away with it. Josh Allen was looking like he was an MVP form. He only really had one mistake on the night. One of his interceptions, the first one, was really not his fault. It like bounced out of the hands of Isaiah McKenzie and into the defender's hands. So that was on McKenzie. It was really only his second interception that was a little bit of a bad mistake on his part. But the rest of his night, 300 yards passing, 4 total touchdowns. The one thing that was a little bit bad for the Bills was the run game still looked a little weak. Like Devin Singletary had an okay game, but Zach Moss and James Cook both had fumbles, so that was not a good look. But the defense, especially the pass rush, Von Miller still showed that he has it. He had 2 sacks. The Bills as a team had, I think, 7 sacks, which is the most sacks they've had in a really long time. They've always been known for having this vaunted and deadly secondary, which it still is deadly, not to mention the fact that they played this game without Tre'Davious White, their top corner. And that still is a big strength of this defense, but now they have a pass rush to go with this secondary, which is, good luck ever throwing on the Buffalo Bills if both of those pieces are in sync, because, you're not going to be getting 100-yard games against Tre'Davious White or Jordan Poyer, and now that Gregory Rousseau and Von Miller are getting up in your face constantly, that just makes it even tougher. So the Bills, they definitely proved why they're the Super Bowl favorites. No bad things there. They made Matthew Stafford and the Rams look silly, which plot twist, going to get to them a little bit later. But yeah, and I definitely agree with everything Zach said about the Chiefs. These are still the teams to beat in the AFC for sure.
Yep. So Chiefs and Bills, they get A's on their report card for week 1. But we'll go now to the bad, and we've each got one AFC team here now for the bad before we do the ugly. But for me, I mean, this team is debatable in the ugly category, but I'm going to put the Indianapolis Colts. Yeah, what were you going to say?
Well, I was going to say, I think I remember your Twitter post that you made about how overrated this team.
Yep.
They definitely,
reads my
made
tweet.
You look smart with that one.
Yeah, no, for sure. The Colts have a good team of players. It's just, I feel like everybody's been overrating them. They've been, what was it last year? Didn't they have the most Pro Bowlers or something like that? Like
something
they didn't
like
even they didn't even make the playoffs.
Well, say the Pro Bowlers are obviously a weird category these days, though, given that of course all the players in the Super Bowl don't end up going, which I know there was a lot of Bengals players that didn't end up going, and then half of the players seem like they opt out these days. So I try not to put too much stock in Pro Bowls anymore. Like
no, it's I can go to a Pro Bowl if I really want to. That's how it is.
Go play some dodgeball.
Yeah. But the Colts, they ended things pretty poorly last year. It wasn't just that Jacksonville game. Down the stretch, they looked bad. And it showed again today. I mean, I do think Matt Ryan is a slight upgrade on Carson Wentz, but I didn't think it was anything that's going to take him to the next level, or I didn't view it like the Matthew Stafford, Rams signing did. So I just wasn't high on the Colts. The Texans, they're still that gritty team from last year. It's definitely, if you go to Houston to play, you better, do your due diligence and stuff, because you can't just expect to walk in there and win. They're a pretty gritty team that, if you're not, if you overlook them, they can certainly beat you. Now this, it ended in a tie for them, so they avoided the loss to the Texans. If they'd lost, it would have
avoided the L.
Yeah, it would have been the ugly. But I mean, the fact that it still was a tie is not a good indicator for the Colts. The AFC South, though, definitely for the taking. As no team won this week, so I'm not saying season's over or anything like that. They got to go to Jacksonville next week, where they've had demons there. So just not a good showing for Matt Ryan and the Colts this week. We'll see if they can bounce back, though. Hopefully not. Connor, tell us about another bad team here.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I know you and Eric were definitely happy about the Colts Texans tie and the Titans loss. Yeah. Like that was definitely the best case scenario for y'all there. Yeah, so I'm going with the Las Vegas Raiders here, and they didn't necessarily perform too bad, but it's just not a good start for them getting off here in the AFC West, given that this is the most stacked division in football, and the Broncos don't play until Monday. I know this comes out on Tuesday, but we record these episodes a little bit earlier. So, the Broncos, they've yet to go, but it's likely they're probably going to get a win against Seattle, given the state of the Seahawks right now. So the Raiders most likely are going to be the only team in the West that are going to start with a loss, and that's just not good, especially given that this loss came to the Chargers. So you're already at a disadvantage when it comes to divisional games against them. They pretty much have to go and win the next game against them. Otherwise, the Chargers will own any tiebreaker against them. But Derek Carr just looked to be off to me. He played okay, but the fact that he, had 3 interceptions, that's obviously not very good. And I feel like it seemed like at times to me that he was just trying to force it to Davante Adams, which, Adams is borderline the best receiver in the league, but, you can't just be staring down Adams every play and trying to force it to him. Like, they were not able to get the run game going really that much. Jacobs didn't have of a day. Waller started to get some targets towards the end, but he wasn't really targeting Waller early on. Hunter Renfrow was MIA this game. It's like they just weren't taking advantage of a lot of these other weapons they have on the team. It's like, screw it, Davante Adams out there somewhere. Like that seemed to be what their offense was like. So, their defense did a decent job holding the Chargers run game intact, but Justin Herbert came close to throwing for 300 yards, and he looked like he was on cruise control for the game. So there's definitely some things for the Raiders that they got to clean up here if they want to have any chance of competing with these other AFC West teams, because like I said, they've already got the one loss to the Chargers. The Broncos are probably going to win on Monday, and the Chiefs looked totally dominant. So you can't be the one that's starting from the bottom in this division.
No, I 100% agree. This is a division where it's not like the AFC South where, you can lose and still be, right there in the thick of it. If these losses, they're going to count later in the season. You're going to look back and, if the Chargers are a game and a half behind the last week, well, it's too bad for them. They could have won week 1, but, but obviously they still have, time to improve. The good, we've talked about the good and the bad. Now the ugly, definitely this is, there's a lot of choices I think for this, but I went with the New England Patriots for the ugly. Now they've lost to Miami so many times. Obviously they tried to go, they adjusted their travel plans and they came to South Florida on like Tuesday or something like that to try and acclimate to the heat sooner than the normal NFL travel time. It didn't work. Obviously, they lost pretty handily to the Dolphins. An interesting stat too. Tua is actually 4-0 against the Patriots in his career, which I don't think anybody's ever been 4-0 against Belichick before, but except for maybe when he was in Cleveland or something like that. But
yeah, maybe then. But yeah, no, that's definitely surprising. I did not know that.
Yeah, obviously, last year they swept them, and I guess his rookie season he was 1-0 against them. But yeah, so for the Patriots, not how you want to start. Obviously, it ended terribly for him in the wild card from last season, and now they've just got a problem where they can't win these divisional games. Last year the Bills were clearly better than them. The Dolphins finished lower than them in the standings, but they beat them both times. They beat them again. It's them and the Jets at the bottom, and I think this pretty much affirms that's how it's going to be this season. I'd be surprised if the Patriots were a top 2 team in this division. Their offense was just so bad. Mac Jones, he suffered a back injury. I don't know what the status for him. I know he was going for x-rays and stuff, but the Patriots, they like to keep secrets and stuff, so they're not going to tell us until they have to what his injury status is. So he wasn't looking that good anyways, but now he's hurt. The offense is just a mess. I think it's a huge mess that they don't have an offensive coordinator, and they've got like Matt Patricia calling plays, and he's better than Joe Judge.
Because that works out.
Yeah, it's like, what are they? I mean, I just really, really question what's going on in New England, and I've kind of been doing that all off season with their draft, their free agency, just everything. To me, they're just one of these teams that's not getting better, and so I think this is going to be a pretty bad year for the Patriots in general. I think this is the start of it. And sorry, Nate, but I'm here for
it. Oh, well, I think everyone's here for it with how much success the Patriots have had, especially in our lifetimes.
Yeah.
At least Eric got to avoid that for like the first 10 years of his life or so. But you and I have pretty much been alive for that's all we've known is the Patriots dynasty. So definitely here for the Patriots struggling. But so then the other team here, Zach is right. There was actually a lot of candidates for the ugly here. But I'm going to go with, the team that my Steelers beat, the Cincinnati Bengals. And while the Steelers did look fairly, at least the offense for the Steelers looked pretty ugly in that game, the Bengals, if the Steelers had lost that game, I don't think anyone would have really, batted an eyelash. They would have been like, oh, well, that's to be expected. The Bengals swept them last year, and, the Bengals are Super Bowl contenders. So, and the Steelers are in a little bit of a rebuild mode, at least when it comes to the offense. So not surprising. But the Bengals, Joe Burrow, he did get better as the game went on, but really for the first, 3 quarters, especially, like he was just really off, 4 interceptions, and one of them, and there was another turnover that he had that it was officially classified as a strip sack. Cause I guess his arm wasn't going forward, but the ball got popped up in the air and Cam Hayward was able to pull it out of the air, and that counted as another turnover. So 5 turnovers attributed to Joe Burrow, and just a lot of them were just bad throws. He almost threw a 5th interception too. And when the Bengals were trying to get the game tying touchdown, he almost threw a 5th one, Cam Sutton. It just went right out of his fingertips. And of course, Evan McPherson, Zach was talking about kickers at the start of this. He's one of the best young kickers in the league. He nailed a 59-yarder in the first quarter. And I was like, oh man, I sure hope we don't get into a situation where this guy's having to, kick a game-winning field goal or something. I have to deal with that whenever we play the Ravens. I'm like, that's the last team I ever want to need a game-winning field goal because I just know Justin Tucker is going to make it. But I won't hurt him too much for the missed extra point because it got blocked. Like Minka Fitzpatrick made a good play, but then he just completely shanked it was like a 36-yarder or something that he just totally shanked for the win in overtime. And it led to the Steelers getting another chance to go down and win the game. So definitely really not a good look for the Bengals, coming off that Super Bowl appearance, losing at home in front of their home crowd against a division rival. I guess there's a little bit of light given that, the Steelers got kind of hurt in this game. So maybe the Bengals will be able to do better against them later in the season. But they just really need to get better on offense because the defense, for the most part, did its job. But Burrow needs to really cut down on the turnovers. They need to get the run game going more. They kind of went away from Mixon later in the game, which they really should have stuck with him. And, it's really not a good look for a potential Super Bowl contender to lose in the way they did in the first week. So, who knows? Maybe we'll be back here next week talking about them being like a Cinderella story last year and being a fluke if they lose again.
Yeah. No, that was definitely just a weird game in general. I caught the end of it, so I saw that. But the fact that, they were still in overtime when they had a -5 turnover margin was just, I mean, that's saying poorly about the Steelers there, but like, just how do you, have 5 turnovers, but somehow can still win the game? And then those kicks and stuff, I guess they said their snapper or their holder or somebody was like a backup there.
Yeah.
And so that, like, the field goal was, they had a bad snap on it, and I know they didn't set the laces up, so he kicked it off the laces.
Which,
So that's what caused it.
I mean, my thing with that is that, like, I know the snap was high, but like, if you're a good NFL kicker, then like the laces shouldn't matter. Like, I mean, that was on McPherson in my mind. But then, like, I thought it was funny on the extra point, they were trying to like make excuses for them, trying to be like, oh well, it must have taken longer because there was a new long snapper, and that's why Minka got in there. I'm like, no, like, I think Minka just made a good play. Like, that was a pretty good snap and a good hold. It was just the Steelers made a good play. Like, quit trying to discredit us.
Yeah, it's special teams are pretty important for sure. I think a lot of teams are realizing that now. But we'll head over now to the NFC and repeat this process with the good, bad, and the uglies. I've got the New York Giants actually as a good.
Surprise.
It's very surprising, but the Giants, winning this week, I think, nobody expected them to go to Nashville and win, especially me. I had the Titans on the lock, or
your survival pick.
Survival, yeah. So I thought that was the game I wouldn't have to worry about. Like, I wasn't even really doing a strategy there. I just picked my most confident. I had every game to choose from, and that was my most confident one, and it wasn't a win for the Titans. But the Giants, they look pretty good. Saquon Barkley especially had I don't know if it was a career day, but one of his best days in years. And the Giants, they look good on defense as well. They had Brian Daboll was definitely appearing to be a good head coaching change for him. They just looked like a much better NFL team. They were competitive pretty much the whole way out. I know the first half wasn't great for them, but the second half they came alive. Daniel Jones did some nice things as well for him. So just a kind of a surprising, shocking thing, but it's good for them that they won this because now they can possibly build off that momentum, celebrate this, but then go in and kind of make a little run here. Not saying they're going to do that or anything, but definitely a surprising team that's starting off on a good foot. So I thought they were one of the better teams in the NFC this week. Connor, who is your pick for this?
Yeah, so my pick here is going to be the Minnesota Vikings. It was to pick a good NFC team. We didn't really mention this when we were talking about the AFC, but the NFC really struggled this week. Not a whole lot of wins coming for the NFC, and the couple wins that did come for the NFC, either it was against another NFC team, and even then it wasn't like terribly good wins per se. So I'm going with the Minnesota Vikings, though. They did take down their arch rival, the Green Bay Packers, in Week 1. I mean, they just look pretty good. I know I thought the Packers were going to win, but in my mind, I did think that the Vikings did have a chance, just because the Vikings, at least in the Kirk Cousins era, they actually are pretty much around the 500 mark when playing the Packers. The Aaron Rodgers, like, he owns the Lions and he owns the Bears, but I mean, kind of who doesn't own the Lions and the Bears, but but against the Vikings, it's usually, it's pretty even between these teams. And just the Packers, I'm trying not to put too much into this, just because, they did the same thing last year where they looked like total trash in Week 1 when they played the Saints, but then they came back and, of course, went 13-4 and were one of the best teams last year. But Aaron Rodgers really struggled. He didn't even hit the 200-yard mark. It was another case of just these teams really going away from the run. Like, Aaron Jones only got 5 carries in the game, which is, Aaron Jones is a really good running back. I don't know why you would do that. So the Vikings did a good job. Justin Jefferson, he was talking a lot before the season started, saying he was going to really separate himself as the best receiver, and he certainly made a case for himself. He had close to 200 yards receiving and 2 touchdowns, so a big day for Justin Jefferson. Dalvin Cook also had a really nice game, close to 100 yards rushing, so just an all-around solid performance for the Vikings. They didn't really do anything wrong. Kirk Cousins didn't make any mistakes. He didn't throw any interceptions, so just to get this big divisional win, a lot of people see the Packers as vulnerable this year without having Devontae Adams anymore. So definitely very important for the Vikings to get this early win over the Packers, because, it's kind of similar to what I was talking about with the Raiders and Chargers. It's like, okay, now the Vikings have the edge. The Packers have to win the game against them later this season. Otherwise, the Vikings will win any tiebreaker they have against them. So definitely a good start for the Vikings, trying to work towards getting that first NFC North crown in quite a while.
Yeah, definitely. That game surprised me a little bit, even though, like you said, Green Bay's been vulnerable Week 1s before. The Vikings have historically played well against the Packers. It just feels though like it's been a little while since the Vikings won that game. Like,
yeah,
I don't know what
you
it
don't
is.
really think about it.
Like Kirk Cousins or whatever. I don't know. He might not have a great record against the Packers, but
what helped them here was it wasn't a primetime game. That's what it was.
true,
if it was in prime time, Kirk Cousins would have thrown like 3 interceptions and fumbled it twice or something. But it was a 4:00 game, so he did a lot better.
Well, can you believe? I don't know if it was like Randy Moss or somebody or Michael Irvin. Somebody predicted Kirk Cousins to win the MVP. Like, seriously. Like, everybody, like, they had, like, the NFL Network had, like, everybody pick their MVP, like Josh Allen, Burrow, Herbert, like
Mahomes,
and
like
then
all the usual suspects.
And then Michael Irvin, I think, picked Kirk Cousins. I was like, whoa, what is this? But
it's funny because you can't even call that a homer pick, because it's not like he played for the Vikings. Like,
yeah, so that was surprising. But moving on to the bad now. I'm gonna go with the Arizona Cardinals as the bad. The Chiefs were the goods, and I talked about them beating up on the Cardinals, so that makes the Cardinals fall in the bad category. Wasn't really close for most of the game. Chiefs, jumped up to an early lead and just kind of added to it as the game went on. Cardinals struggled on offense for a bit, some turnovers, and I think this has the potential to go really bad. They play in a tough division. If they don't win their divisional games, they've got a tough schedule, like I noted in their season preview. This could go really, really bad for them. I believe their GM was extended in the offseason. I don't know if Kingsbury was, though. He may or may not have been extended, but either way, the Cardinals fans, they're going to be, they're already kind of impatient with how things are going. DeAndre Hopkins is suspended, the complete failures at the end of last season. Like, if they don't start out good, I don't think there's any faith in this team later on in the year. They're one of those teams that needs to start out the season hot, and this is just not it. I don't know who they play in week 2, but, I think for any team, that's 0-1, the Cardinals, if they were to start out 0-2, I think it could just be the sign of bad things to come for them.
So to answer your question about who they play next week, they play the Raiders in Vegas.
Ooh, so that's like two teams that made the bad list. So sounds like I'm talking about like Santa giving like presents, the naughty list or whatever. But but yeah, that's a huge game for him. That's also going to be the Chandler Jones revenge game for him too. So the Cardinals, I don't know. It's just if what we saw today is any indication of their season, it's not going to go well for them.
Yeah, so moving on here to the other bad team from the NFC, the Carolina Panthers. This was the Baker Mayfield revenge game. Seems like there's going to be a lot of revenge games happening this year with Mayfield. And I know later in the season, we're going to have the Deshaun Watson revenge game. But this was happening, and boy, oh boy, man, Baker, he looked awful the first couple, really for the first 3 quarters. It wasn't until the fourth quarter that he really started to wake up. He was just making some really bad throws. Looked like he hadn't thrown a football in over a year, just with the way he was making these throws. Like, he was overthrowing receivers, he was underthrowing receivers. He had one play where it almost looked like he forgot that he was playing for the Panthers and not the Browns, because he threw it directly to a Browns player. Like, there wasn't even a Panthers player like really super close to that ball. So really bad for him there. And then just the other bad thing for the Panthers here in this game besides him was, the offensive line really struggled. That was one thing that they really thought they were going to be able to fix in the offseason. They drafted Ikwonu from NC State, and Myles Garrett, for the most part, ate him alive. Not necessarily saying that, that was unexpected. It's a really tough task for a rookie offensive tackle to, in your first game, draw Myles Garrett on the other side. But, the Browns pass rush was getting to Mayfield pretty much all game. And the defense, they did an okay job, but their run defense was looking really bad. Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, especially Chubb, were gashing them for a lot of yards. So definitely going to be something to watch out for here. I know I mentioned at one point when I was watching this game, given how bad Baker was, like, I know Sam Darnold is hurt, but I was like, man, if he wasn't hurt, I'd almost consider going to him at this point with how bad Baker had been looking, which anytime you're wanting to put Sam Darnold in for someone, they must be doing bad. So going to be interesting to see how the Panthers rebound from this. They are playing in a little bit of a suspect division. They play in a division with the Falcons, and the Saints didn't exactly look too good this week, so they could potentially get a win against them at some point. But they definitely need to build off of this. And I know there's a little bit of controversy, but with there was a roughing the passer call. But anytime you let Jacoby Brissett beat you, that's not a good thing. So not good for the Panthers.
Yeah. And the NFC South was kind of weird this week, where you thought for the whole game the Falcons were going to win too, and then they pull the Falcons and gave up like a 16 point fourth quarter lead to the Saints and gave the Saints a win. So the Saints fans are breathing a sigh of relief at that one, but Falcons fans probably just think, oh, another year like this
like
again.
Falcons fans just have like no hair left. They've been pulling it out for ages. Like, when is this trope going to end of them blowing leads in the fourth quarter? Like, I feel like it's never going to end.
It's definitely going to keep happening, I think. Let's finish things up and talk about the ugly. And we've got 2 NFC West teams here to talk about the ugly. I'm going to take the 49ers. Now, I'm not going to criticize the offense too much, as far as, it's Trey Lance's first game as the starter. He's like a rookie, and, the weather conditions were terrible in this game in Chicago. There's standing water on the field. There's people using squeegees and stuff to try and take the water off. At the end of the game, the Bears players all slid on water for 20 yards. It was pretty crazy, like a slip and slide out there. So, whenever you have these sorts of football games where it's crazy weather or wind or anything like that, you kind of take it with a grain of salt. But for the 49ers, the concerning part is this is the Chicago Bears. I mean, many people view the Bears as one of the worst teams, myself included, potential number one pick in next year's draft team, and they're also in the similar situation where they have an unproven second year quarterback with Justin Fields. And so it just looks bad for the 49ers because they could have had Fields, who played better than Lance did. They could have had him in the draft, but they took Lance instead. And, it's the defense. I would have thought with these conditions, the defense could have posted a shutout or something like that, or held the Bears to just, 3 points or a touchdown, whatever. But the defense didn't quite do that. I know it was still a good defensive day for them, but still, Shanahan and stuff. I'm just not buying Trey Lance being a good quarterback in general. So I came into this game with worries for the 49ers. It doesn't seem like the team's fully bought in on him either. He wasn't voted the captain of the team. Jimmy G's still there. People are loyal to Jimmy G in that organization. A lot of people really like him as a person, I guess. So they feel like the 49ers have done Jimmy G wrong. So it's just, I don't know, just a lot of weird vibes with the 49ers keeping Jimmy G, and then this week 1 loss to the Bears. It's just not a good look for them. People are talking about this team as like a Super Bowl team. And, granted, they are very talented. George Kittle didn't play, but not a good way to start losing to the Bears. I mean, when we look back on this later in the year, and if they end up being a good team, we're going to be like, how the heck did they lose to the Bears? But yeah, it happened. So I'm going to put them in the ugly category this week.
Yeah, definitely, especially when you look at their offense in that game. The fact that, the 49ers, you think with these conditions, the 49ers pride themselves on being like a run-heavy, run-first team, and on their ability to run the ball, and they just completely failed at that for the most part, too. So it's like, I think I know Eli Mitchell got hurt, but, when Trey Lance is your leading rusher with only 50-something yards, that's not good in a game like that. So, but the final team we mentioned them a little bit earlier, so I'm going to keep this brief on them, is the Los Angeles Rams. And, I already talked about how good the Bills did in that game, but, the defending Super Bowl champions, man, you got to have a better showing than that. You can't just let the Bills walk all over you like that, especially when that could potentially be like a future Super Bowl matchup. Stafford looked like he was off. He said that he was ready to go and that his injury wasn't hampering him, but he really did look off. I don't know how much of that was just the Bills' pass rush, because they were getting in his face all game, and how much of it was him. But he had 3 interceptions, and he took a lot of sacks in that game. And just another thing that really the Rams, something that they had a problem with last year, they just did not try to run the ball at all. Cam Akers only had 3 carries in the game, which really baffled me because I thought he was supposed to be the number 1 running back. And, Darrell Henderson was the one that was in there for the most part, which I thought that he had pretty much proven that he's not a number 1 running back. So big failure on the part of the run game there. And also, Jalen Ramsey, he at this point is just, in my mind, one of the most overrated cornerbacks in the league. He got completely burned the entire game, not even just on that one play where Stephon Diggs burned him, but he was getting burned all over the place. And he was, he was talking a lot of smack during the game, especially in the first half when it was close. And then just to come out on the other side with how well the Bills did, how much he got torched, just a really bad look for Jalen Ramsey. So, definitely the Rams are going to have a lot of soul searching that they're going to have to do for next week if they want to have any chance of not only making it back to the Super Bowl, but just competing in this division with teams like the Niners and Cardinals.
Yeah, for sure. But 3 of these teams made the list here, so
that is true. So maybe it's not that good.
Yeah, and then the 4th being the Seahawks. We don't know what's going to happen Monday night yet, but they're not expected to do much this year either. But that will wrap up this episode, guys. Thanks for listening and watching. Leave a like or a comment on YouTube if you enjoyed this content. And until next time, guys, remember, be clutch.
For Eric, peace.